Good evening. It is February 2nd, 2026. I'm going to call to order our study session for February 2nd, 2026. We have 3.5 items on our agenda tonight. Number one, we have city clerk interviews. We have digital billboards and general sign code amendments. We have our draft resident survey, and then our staff reports. We have a housing-related code amendments. We will start, as we always start our study sessions and our meetings, with public comment. If you are signed up to speak, you may come up and speak about anything on the agenda tonight. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. When you get up to the podium up here, please introduce yourself. Give us your first name, your last name. Please spell your last name. Let us know if you live and work in Wheat Ridge. And then as you're speaking on the clerk's desk here, there are 3 lights. As long as the light is green, you have plenty of time to speak. When it turns yellow, you've got about 30 seconds to wrap it up. And when it turns red, please wrap up your comments. First up tonight, I will call up, and I apologize if I butcher your names, Steve Shin. Shin? That was close. And on deck, we have Marcus Daniel.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Is this okay? And city staff. My name is Steve Shin. I represent Outfront Media. We're one of the largest outdoor advertising billboard companies in the country, as well as the state of Colorado. Our company is one of the largest, I repeated myself. We own 7 of the 15 billboards that are currently there along the I-70 corridor that are documented here. We also own the new digital billboards that we've developed in the city of Arvada, which are also noted in the memorandum staff report along I-76 and I-70. On January 23rd, we submitted a letter to the city asking some questions and clarifications about the policy and staff recommendations. Last week, we did have a meeting and a follow-up with Lauren McCulloch and Janet Easley, who were very, very helpful in helping us understand this process. We would like to learn more about the lottery process. It's always been kind of a question to us. The maximum height of signs, we're also concerned about, because many of these signs will have to be rebuilt in their current configuration, and the number of allowable conversions. The recommended 1 mile spacing is kind of a concern to us. It seems a little excessive based on CDOT's 1,000 foot spacing. Those are my comments. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. We have Marcus Daniel up, and then Linda. I'm just going to leave it at Linda on deck.
Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Marcus Daniel. Last name is spelled Dannneil. I'm with Mile High Outdoor, a local Colorado billboard company. We do operate billboards in Wheat Ridge. I just wanted to express, similar to what Steve Shin said, we support the guidelines that CDOT has set forward as far as spacing goes. They are stringent, more stringent than federal law requires. We think it's a very, very fair spacing requirement. I also am interested to hear about the lottery and how that would work, a little bit more detail on that, but would also be for potentially, I think it was suggested at one point in time where each company could choose one location. We could figure out the spacing beforehand and go from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe it's Linda on up, and then Cliff Marr on deck. Okay. All right, then we will go ahead and go to Cliff.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all's participation tonight. I am Cliff Moak, M-O-A-K. I'm the general manager of Lamar Advertising. I wanted to, again, voice our support, seconding what Steve and Marcus has shared. Lamar Advertising is one of the largest billboard operators in the world, and we've been appreciative of the efforts of what has been brought forward. We're interested to hear more about the lottery, and again, appreciative of the time and support of the initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. We have nobody else signed up in-house to speak, but we do have somebody signed up online. It looks like we have a Jacob Aragon. Okay. Since we have nobody online, we will go to agenda item number 1, which is our city clerk interviews. Mr. Goff, do we have...
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this evening we have on the agenda an interview and presentation from a candidate for our city clerk position. As you know, our former city clerk, Steve Kirkpatrick, passed away in 2025. This position's been vacant since that time. We did have a ballot question this last November election to eliminate the elected city clerk position. That ballot question did not pass. So we are here this evening. We started an application process and received one application from Ms. Hoppy, and she is here this evening to give a 3 to 5 minutes presentation on why she wants the role, and then you guys have time for questions you may want to ask.
All right, let's kick it over to Janice Hoppy.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I do not have a 3 to 5 minute presentation nor any slides. The bullet point lover in me has maybe a minute and a half. So, the city clerk position is really important in our city. I recently found out that it's the only staff mandated position by state statute. So you don't even have to have a city manager, but you have to have a city clerk. Not that I'm trying to get rid of Manager Goff. Wheat Ridge is unique in having an elected city clerk, and most municipalities hire trained professionals. I know that sometimes people get upset when you say a professional, because if you're getting paid for the job, you're a professional. However, there's actual trainings. There's the CMC, which is the Certified Municipal Clerk, and then there's the MMC, which is the Master Municipal Clerk Certification. So it's important to have trained professionals. When Wheat Ridge was in the process of hiring our professionals and seeing how that would work with an elected, we unfortunately lost Steve Kirkpatrick. God rest his soul. And it's been a year since we've had an elected in this position. And, however, in the meantime, in the last year, our senior deputy city clerk and our deputy city clerk have done a lot of work to put together a productive, trustworthy, and professional office. And they have taken that role very seriously and has served our city well in those positions. But what does it look like operationally when you add an elected into this position now? And it's not something that's been fully fleshed out. So when the ballot measure that I will say I am partially responsible for, I voted to put it on there, and then felt that it was kind of a no-brainer. We didn't really have to do much work around it, and it failed. I felt compelled to make sure that this city clerk office is set up for the future of success. So what does that look like operationally? Well, that's something that we'll figure out, but my goals over the next 1 year and 9 months, it's not even 2 years anymore, will be to solidify the roles between the 3 positions: the city clerk-elect, the senior deputy clerk, and the deputy clerk. Another goal would be to work with city council on what the future of that office looks like, and I will support council's decision on however they think that should happen. And then to set up professional firewalls to maintain the integrity of the office that the senior deputy clerk and deputy clerk have created over the last year. Whether it's true or not, there have been decisions that have come out of that office that people felt were politically motivated. And when you have staff in that position that are trained staff, then you need to make sure that there are, if there's an elected in that position, some professional firewalls around that. Skills and experience that I bring to this office is I have a deep knowledge of the city, how the city works, a deep knowledge of the city clerk's office, not only from being an elected official, but also from the many years that I worked with the city's clerk's office when I was an advocate and a community leader. I am a highly skilled consensus builder. I am very well-versed and highly successful at putting together systems, standing operating procedures, and practical solutions for effective operations. At the end of my service, the community and you can feel confident that the clerk's office will be fair, honest, helpful to anyone who comes into that office and needs the services, and ensuring that equitable outcomes come for our community. And with that, I welcome any questions from the application that I put in.
Thank you. Do we have questions from council? Councilor Okada.
Thank you, Ms. Hoppy. In your presentation just now, you mentioned the importance of firewall building. I just want you to elaborate and maybe define what you mean by firewall.
Sure, I think that it can be done through degrees of separation of both the operational part and then what an elected would do. So when there is an elected in the position and they're making decisions and the community has a grievance with it, then their only process for grievance in that situation would be a lawsuit or a recall, right? If it's a staff member, all staff members in the city of Wheat Ridge are under the grievance process that goes through the city manager's office. And so if we're able to make those separations, then as a community member, your grievance process is more attainable and probably will have more likely better outcomes without spending taxpayer dollars on lawsuits and things like that, which we've had to do in the past.
Thank you.
Councilor Hulteen. Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen.
you. Thank you so much for putting your name in for consideration on this. I don't really have a question. I just want to state, I think one of the things that makes me feel good about my planned support of appointing you is just that you have been an elected official and you have been, selected by our community as somebody who's trustworthy to recommend them. And I think for me, that really means a lot, since this is a really high profile position of high trust. And I just think about, the last several years, and you and I have actually been great partners trying to work with the clerk's office to make sure that, what happens there is fair and transparent and responsive, while, sticking to the structure that we all need to have faith and confidence in, what governance needs to look like. So I want to just say, I'm excited that you put your name in for the reasons both that I've personally experienced with you, but that at the end of the day, our community has endorsed you as a trustworthy public official. And so we're really fortunate to be able to have a very qualified and publicly endorsed candidate to consider. So thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Martell.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Hoppy, for being here. In your application, one of the questions was around promoting positive engagement and trust within the community. And you talked about working with high school seniors to help inform and engage them in the election process. And that just really sounded really intriguing to me and really exciting. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that would look like?
Yeah, so typically there's a nonpartisan groups that go out and help get people registered to vote. And I have had 4. I've got my last one that's a senior at Wheat Ridge High School. Over the last 16 years, 8, 10, 11 years, over the last 11 years at Wheat Ridge High School. My oldest 2, they were able to pre-register to be a voter. And my youngest 2 haven't had that opportunity. And I think that that's a really missed opportunity. First off, the city of Wheat Ridge is unique in the fact that we have a single high school, right? Like one city, one high school. And I've worked with the administration at that high school a lot over the years on different things. And I think that we're missing an opportunity to educate our youth on voting rights and civic process in general. And I really would look very forward to going and working in the school with the kids over that.
Thank you for that. And also, I'd like to echo Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen's comments that I look forward to the opportunity to support your application, and am very excited that you put your name in for this role. Thank you.
Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Hoppy, in your application, you described putting together systems, standard procedures, and practical solutions for effective operations. Have you had an opportunity to, in your service with the city, to review some of those existing systems and procedures, and is there anything specifically that you look to maybe tweaking or changing somehow?
I did have the opportunity to meet with our freshly retired senior deputy clerk and our interim senior deputy clerk and go over kind of what the separations of duties were in that office prior to with Mr. Kirkpatrick, but he got ill very soon after that. And so they really have taken on all of those. Now, that was something that they worked with Mr. Kirkpatrick on the things that he felt comfortable doing. Now, while I look at that list, I think that there are definite opportunities where the trained professionals should be doing work with like the petitions and the signing of the resolutions and the minutes and the stuff like that. So looking at that, I think that there is potentially some change in what was originally separated out to what could be separated out. Again, my whole plan is to, regardless of what council decides to do in the future for this position, regardless if in a year and 9 months, it's going to have an elected in it or not have an elected in it. My plan is that it will be successful both ways. Do I think that that office can operate without an elected? I absolutely do. Do I think that that office can operate with an elected? Yes, but I don't think that, going to working with the school and the community is something that an elected would have to do. I think it's something that your trained professional could also do. So it'll be looking at like where do we need to put up our protections so that there is a grievance process that does not require a lawsuit, waste of taxpayer dollars, or a recall election. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, Councilor Hoppy.
Citizen Hoppy for
Citizen
now.
Hoppy, I was just going to say, for that whole month you were a citizen. Well, we will see you again next Monday.
Great.
Where we will vote on the appointment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the opportunity.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 2. That is our sign billboards. All right, fantastic.
Mr. Dahl, do you want to come?
Well, Jana's getting situated. We've got some slides. So this will be, Jana did a lot of time on the memo and background and research. I think I saw Cole in here earlier. He helped us as well with some of the peer community research. So we went ahead and lumped into one memo 2 topics. So for the purpose of tonight's discussion, we'll go through the billboard discussion, and then we'll pause and just focus on that, get a consensus on that, and then we'll take part 2, which is our local sign amendments, just to try to keep the conversation more organized. Jana Easley is our planning manager.
Good evening. I do have a brief presentation. I know some of you were here a year ago at the study session, and some of you were not. So my apologies if any of this is repeated, but Lauren, you went over the overview, and I forget where to click here. There we go. I got it. Thank you. So again, this is just the overview slide. We'll break this into 2 parts. First, we'll talk about the billboards, and then we'll talk about the local business sign proposed amendments. To give you a little bit of background, prior to 1991, the city did not regulate billboards. They were allowed anywhere. And since that time, there have been a number of different code amendments that have gone through, and also some amortization, which is kind of how it started, in that certain billboards would be phased out by 1996. We had 16 remaining, and then in 2024, we had another code amendment we had a vacancy open, and we had the lottery system was open, and we did not receive any applications for that, and we ended up going down to 15. That was council's decision. And so in addition to that, we also strengthened the requirements for abandoned billboards that cannot be replaced, and there was a definition of abandoned in our code, very specific, and also clarified that digital billboards are prohibited, which has been a longstanding policy. So that leaves us to where we are this evening. Well, this is also 1 year ago, the study session. The billboard industry asked the city to reconsider the prohibition on digital billboards. So that's what brings us here this evening. First of all, here's a map that shows the locations in red of all static billboards within the city of Wheat Ridge. And then the green dots that are up on Highway 76 and one on I-70, those are digital billboards in Arvada. So that kind of gives you an idea of most, if not all, of the billboards right along the I-76, I-70 corridor in proximity to the city of Wheat Ridge. Because the topic of illumination came up a year ago, I wanted to just present a couple of slides to kind of get you familiar with what some of the newer technology is. The three digital billboards that you see up here are the digital billboards that are in Arvada presently. They were all approved through an alternative sign program, which is basically a land use application. And then I did also pull one picture of a static billboard that's in Wheat Ridge with just some uplighting on it, so you can kind of see the difference between the different types of lighting. And then I've got a really short video that I wanted to show you. And what do I need to do for this? Sorry. So in this video, it's an example of some technology. Technology's come a long way with regard to digital billboards. When I started in planning 20 plus years ago, digital billboards had no illumination controls. They had no, a lot of cities didn't have any rules around how many nits or how many lumens or how many this or that it could be and how bright it could be. And so the technology has actually come quite a long way. And this will give you an example, although I'm not, this just happens to be an example company that uses this technology, but it was a decent video, so.
Digital billboards are ideally placed in high traffic areas along highways and in cities. At times, prime display locations may be adjacent or close to a residential area that is not part of the intended viewing audience. We want to be good neighbors. Daktronics offers an expert site analysis and light study to determine whether light mitigation technology is necessary for a billboard to be neighborhood friendly. LightDirect, Daktronics light mitigating billboard technology, narrows down the viewing cone, targeting only the desired audience. Within the viewing area, image quality is crisp and clear for motorists and pedestrians, day or night, while light from the billboard is alleviated the moment the viewer leaves the specified display area. This provides a neighborhood-friendly approach to digital billboards without compromising the viewability from the intended audience. LightDirect light mitigating technology is just one part of the Daktronics difference. Learn more at daktronics.com/out-of-home.
Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of what kind of technology there is now out there. So if you all decide to proceed with digital billboards, there are a lot of different illumination best practices that we can implement and that sort of thing. The spacing is the next thing that I wanted to talk about. We've got essentially 4 groupings of billboards along I-70 and I-76 in the city of Wheat Ridge. And between those is approximately a mile or more between each of the groupings. This map just kind of shows you on a broad level how far a mile is approximately between the different groupings. And then you can see the center grouping is actually, they're spread out a little bit farther than 1 mile. And then to give you a little bit better idea of the spacing as you zoom in a little bit closer, Northglenn was one of the cities that had a 2,000-foot spacing. on their digital billboards. And so this gives you a good idea of how far apart those billboards might be. The two that are down in the lower left-hand corner are approximately 650 feet apart, which meets the static billboard distance requirements by CDOT of 500 feet. However, if those were digital, those two could not be that close together in proximity because the minimum CDOT spacing on digital billboards is 1,000. So it kind of gives you an idea of how far apart 2,000 feet would look versus the 1 mile distance. And then a little about the lottery process. This also came up at the study session last year, but it's worth mentioning that the reason the city used a lottery process when we had openings for billboards when they were being amortized out was because it was determined that it was the most equitable process that we could use. There was no question as to whether or not when an application came in, whether or not it was complete. So even if you have a timestamp on something, sometimes, and it's not uncommon, that we get an application in that is actually missing some of the checklist items that are required. And so then it becomes who was actually in first, and this application wasn't sufficient, and that sort of thing. So it really, in our mind, it has worked well for us in the past. We actually got rid of the lottery process for vacancies at the last go-around a couple of years ago. But this would be a very similar process wherein there would be applications that came forward, and once they were all deemed complete, then they would be, in the running basically for this lottery process. It would also open it up to, let's say one of the digital billboards went away for some reason. It would allow for a replacement of that through a similar process in which each of the different sign companies or a new one could apply for that spot. And that would depend on the spacing. So if you all decided a 1 mile or a 2,000 foot or a 1,000 foot, whatever that may be, then staff would look at that against, whatever regulations we had in place and see if it, first of all, would even qualify for that location. So the question for council tonight is, first of all, should we allow digital billboards in the city of Wheat Ridge? And that's going to be the first topic of discussion. If you decide yes, then there will be some additional questions. But I would open it up for discussion on this subject first.
Okay. Let's kind of go around and see how you guys feel about that. Maybe volunteers. Councilor Snell.
Thank you for this, and thank you for the video that we saw before this. I'm curious, and are we to assume that all of the digital billboards would be the Daktronics billboards that were shown in the video?
That's a great question. And that just happened to be a video that showed how the louvers work so that you're not seeing it from every distance along the highway, for example. We can regulate illumination best practices. We cannot say whether or not it's Daktronics or some other company, but it may be. So.
Sorry, whatever company it is has similar technology.
Correct.
To limit the light pollution or the light spread. Okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm open to the digital billboards, but I do think, and I'm open to the distance, but with a very careful consideration of proximity to residential. And so I would much rather see two placed closer together, not near residential, than spacing too farther apart, but near residential. One question I have too is if we are anywhere, I don't know if we should do it anywhere near residential, but there's any way that we could do some type of assessment of the light emitting at night before the sign even goes in, just to have like a base. Like, this is what the base is, this is what we're used to, and then we can have have that conversation, just so that in the future, if there's any issues, we have some data. I might have some other questions later, but that's good for now. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you.
Thank Thank you. Counselor Wood.
Yeah, actually, I had a follow-up question about distance. Since CDOT requires 1,000 feet, and it sounds like, and correct me if I read that wrong, that the recommendation is a mile. I'd kind of like it, so again, correct me if I read that wrong. I'd like to understand why so much more of an increase in distance between the two.
Sure, that's a great question. One of it has to do with the 4 clusters of billboards that we have now. We've got 4 billboard companies, 2 or 3 of whom are with us this evening. But if you look at the spacing that we have, it is approximately 1 mile between the groupings. And one of them is actually more like 2 miles. You could certainly, and this will be one of the discussion items, is if you decide to allow digital billboards, what should that spacing be? And I think that that's something that you all may want to discuss. If CDOT spacing is so that on one side of the road, in each direction, the spacing is 1,000 feet. The other topic that you might want to think about is whether or not a one-sided or two-sided electronic or digital billboard would be appropriate. Arvada has 1 two-sided, I believe, and 2 one-sided digital billboards. And so, but when you start thinking about proximity to other things like residential or, for instance, we also have to take into consideration the Arvada digital billboards, which we would, of course, because the minimum of 1,000 based on CDOT would apply. But that's kind of where we came up with. If you've got 1 in each group, that allows for 4 total in one direction or the other direction or combination. But certainly council could look at a different spacing if they chose.
So I hate to show my ignorance, but I'm trying to get a good understanding of this. So I understood, and I did see what the clusters are about a mile apart. But I guess I thought in terms of each billboard would have to be that far apart with as recommended at this point in time. So,
Yes,
yeah.
you're absolutely correct. So that would allow for one, essentially, roughly speaking, 1 digital billboard which within each one of those 4 clusters.
So does that mean then that the clusters would have to decrease in size? In other words, you couldn't have 4 in a cluster, you could only have 1? Is that?
The others just wouldn't be digital.
Oh, I got it. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Holteen.
Thank you. So to the question at hand about should we allow digital billboards, I have made it known I am not a fan of billboards. My constituents in my district who look out over them do not love them. And I realize, we can't just get rid of billboards. So the question about modernizing them with a digital billboard, I mean, my frame of thinking on it is, this is being brought to us by billboard operators who stand to generate more revenue by using digital billboards. So that's the interest that has brought it forward to our community. It wasn't something we've asked for, we're responding to. And, and I know in previous discussions, we've talked about local businesses and, the reality is it's not local businesses, it's national change typically, or big statewide chains. So it's not a local business question to me. So that having been said, I am okay with digital billboards, but I'm going to probably want to dig in on some of the regulations, including Councilmember Snell's question about regulating the light pollution. I think the thing I'm going to feel the most strongly about is the pace of rotation, how quickly that they can change, because one of my biggest concerns is the visual distractions on the interstate. We respond to a lot of terrible accidents on I-70. And I mean, that's part of why I would like to get rid of the billboards, is I think they're a visual distraction, and what we're trying to do is make our roads safer, and billboards do not contribute to that. So, I'm okay on it, but I'm also just flagging, I'm going to want to dig in on some of the regulations to make sure that they aren't taking away from some of the public health and safety concerns that we're trying to address in our city because we are responding to interstate accidents that really is not our jurisdictional response, and we're paying for them out of our budget. So those are my concerns going in, but I will give it a thumbs up for the, yes, I will allow digital billboards.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the presentation, especially the the video. I kind of echo Councilor Ohm and Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen on their concerns. I have a lifelong friend that lives right where one of these are going to be, and that's kind of a concern because across the street from where my buddy lives, it was the Trailer Source was there, and they had a digital one, and a couple of years ago that was really bright and it made him grumpier than normal. That's the biggest concern is as Councilor Ohm had said, the closeness to the residential. I drove this over the weekend, and really, my recollection is like built on that diagram we had up there, like number 1 and number 2 were the only ones that were really close to residential. So, and I'm really interested in the, as Mayor Pro Tem said, the rotation and then the technology to, as you drive by, that kind of made my heart a little easier on supporting, changing all this, because they do look a little bit better when they're more modernized. But I don't have a problem with allowing them. I just am tender about a couple of the spots myself personally.
Councilor Okada.
Thank you, Mayor. In the question about should we allow digital billboards, I'm trying to focus my questions in that area, of course, right now. To echo the Mayor Pro Tem, this is a question brought to us not by our community, but by the business interests that are in our community. So I do have a question regarding a summary of the tangible benefits that we would typically expect from companies that are advertising in our community. I feel underprepared for this because this is something I would normally do research on ahead of time, but tax revenue, what kind of benefits do we currently gain from the billboards we have? And would we expect with the increased efficiency of the digital billboards for our benefits to increase?
Those are really great questions. The city doesn't receive any tax revenue from billboards. We receive property tax from the underlying property, but the billboards are on a leased parcel on private land. So we don't gain any revenue from those. If they come in for a building permit, we do have permit fees that would be collected, but that would be true for any commercial sign. As far as the benefits, the one thing that I will mention that may be of a benefit, although this would have to also be something that would be written in. There is the ability through the digital billboards to have emergency, like Amber Alerts and that sort of thing. I believe they reserve, I want to say 3 spaces for those. And so that may be the one benefit that I could see, aside from whether or not a local business would be advertising on them.
Does the state already require that type of emergency alert through those billboards? Or is that something that, as a city, we would need to consider?
I am not sure. Do you know?
I agree with Janet. Financial, not much digital from revenue. Could probably I don't know offhand for the state.
Thank you.
I will add that on the state highway signs, those are where you typically would see like an Amber Alert or something like that. So
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, just a reflection from my perspective. Companies that stand to make a lot of profit in our communities by being present in the eye space of our residents. Many residents that I've talked to in District 4 in the campaign and since have had comments about the billboards that we've seen around us. And I'm realizing too, billboards as defined as being on the interstate, but even beyond the interstate, we have signage that is like that I think it could help me to educate some of my constituents in that regard. It doesn't put me firmly into one camp or another, but it is something that I want to reflect on openly. It just seems like a lot of money to be made here, but with the city not benefiting much from it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Martell.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to confirm that if we do allow digital billboards and using the recommendation of a maximum of 4, that would mean 4 of our existing billboards could be upgraded to digital, not 4 additional billboards.
That is correct.
Okay. And in the same spot, not necessarily one come down here and another one over there.
That is correct.
Okay, perfect.
Size and everything else would remain the same.
Thank you for that. I was going to ask a similar question to Councilmember Okada. If we move forward with this and do allow for 4 digital billboards, could there be an opportunity for some type of additional permitting fee for the additional lighting and for the additional work that would be needed, so that there is a benefit to the city, but also to offset any additional work that the city might need to do in city staffing to have a new tier of billboards? Like, do we anticipate additional cost of staff time or anything like that?
Those are really great questions. Typically, with the way that sign lighting has evolved, I remember back in the day, you would send somebody out with a light meter and say, "Is this too bright?" Now there are shutoffs, so if the sign malfunctions, it can actually it will shut itself off. We can write things like that into the code to make sure that all those safety precautions are written into the regulations. There are also, for instance, when the sun goes down, the light automatically dims, so there's automatic dimming and that sort of thing. It gets brighter when it's a brighter day out. So those are certainly something that can be written into the regulations.
I'll maybe add too, I appreciate you acknowledging the staff time and the administrative lift. I think we wanted to ask this question first because if there wasn't a majority interest, we wouldn't want to get into the weeds on what the regulations would be. My impression is that the light regulations for billboards is less of an issue than the light regulations for a random business's illuminated sign, where they have a little less sophistication in the world of light pollution and light technology. So I have less concern actually with billboards than I do with some of our other illuminated signs. We would, I think, if this moves forward, contemplate that there'd need to be a specific submittal that shows sort of that analysis that you saw in the video. So I appreciate your sensitivity to that. I think our interest would be that if there is a consensus to allow digital billboards, that the regulatory framework be as simple as possible, because billboards historically have been a significant amount of time when it comes to managing the lottery. So we will be presenting to you our recommendation and to try to keep it simple. But I don't foresee beyond sort of the initial filling of these 4 conversions that we'd have an enormous staff lift.
Thank you.
Oh, you done? Sorry, go ahead.
Finish. I just wanted to add that I think with the sensitivity to staff work and with the sensitivity to the placement around commercial versus primarily residential areas, I think if we're thoughtful around that and how we move forward, I would agree to moving forward with digital billboards.
Just before we lose track of the previous question about potential benefits to the city, another benefit, we've talked to at least 1 or 2 of the billboard companies over the last couple of years. There is a possibility for the city having an advertisement on the signs themselves. So that's, could be a significant benefit there.
Any other questions, Councilor Martell? No? Okay, thank you. Councilor Ohm?
Thank you, Mayor. So the process for the signs, would that be like a special use permit? Or how would that be done? My question is really towards, I want to have an understanding, what are our guardrails?
Yeah, I mean, it would involve a lottery process, most likely.
Right.
And then it basically is a building permit beyond that. There's not a land use approval, so to speak, that goes along with signage, billboard signage.
Is there any, yeah, go ahead.
Remembering that these are the.
Mr. Dahl, you might want to use your mic there.
Yeah. Remembering, these billboards are in place.
Yes.
So, and the city, I know, has certainly over the years been not interested in adding to additional locations. So the spots that are there are the spots that are there.
Right.
Bringing me to the question about, well, in the clusters, if you were to say a mile spacing, then that would just the math based upon the map that you saw would say, okay, 4 of the billboards out there could be digitized, one probably in each cluster if you ended up with the mile spacing. And to get there, as Janice said, we'd need a process, and that would be a formal lottery process. Hello, in these 4 clusters, there is now the ability to digitize, and we'll take applications within those clusters for, I'm kind of making up what the process might be, for if you want to digitize your billboard, you're in the cluster, put your name in the hat.
I'm thinking more along the lines that we have a lottery system for the marijuana industry locations, and that if, something isn't right, they jeopardize losing that, whatever that permit location is, and then it goes on. That's my understanding. And then it potentially goes on. So there's a little bit of a, I guess I would say, a carrot for good behavior. That's to simplify it.
Well, sort of on an ongoing basis after it's in place?
Maybe there could be a yearly or 2, couple year renewal that, we've checked the boxes, we have a good partner. But if there's not, there's other people in the wind waiting to gladly have that put back into the lottery system.
If we get down that far into,
Yeah.
You say yes to digital, then we get into lottery system, and then we get into actually enforcement on an ongoing basis is kind of where you're at.
Yeah.
With that. The pushback you might get, and this is something we have to bring back to you, would be the capital investment in digitizing is going to be significant as opposed to sort of renewal of a permit. It's not out of the world of possibility to say we renew permits based upon behavior, so this is a permit.
If we didn't do that, could we have some type of public outreach where wherever these potential locations go, that we have the public weigh in and say, I'm okay with that location, or I'm not okay with that location?
Public weigh in.
Like a sticky note, and it's like,
Yeah.
are you okay with this location? Instead of just the city making a recommendation, like, here's where it's gonna go and hope it works out.
I think it's not something we've recommended, because I think if you want to have if you're open to having digital billboards, again, I think our goal is to have it as simple as possible in the
Okay.
first permitting and for the enduring future. The image that Jana shared, I think we were pleasantly surprised by how if you didn't have that label, you wouldn't be able to pick out which was digital and which was uplit. The glare from uplighting is distinctly different and sometimes more offensive than the digital. I think what we could do, should we end up regulating these, is have operational standards that just say, the light glare cannot be a nuisance. We have other similar language. It's a little easier to enforce when you have a partner who knows how to operate an illuminated billboard. So there is a sensitivity to, who can see it and from where. There's technology that I think has caught up to that. But if you would like to allow digital billboards, my recommendation is that we keep it as simple as possible. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, that we are willing to be more flexible on distance for a variety of reasons, to ensure that some of our, residential spacing and other things are prioritized. 1 mile doesn't need to be the magic number. But yeah, I think if we're going to get into the business of this, less is more from a regulatory standpoint.
Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, this is a most interesting discussion. And I'm sure it'll get more interesting when we get to the second part of our discussion here. But looking at the map, the first thing you notice is that these billboards are all along I-70. This is something we probably should have done a while ago. I fully support allowing the companies to invest in the billboard that makes the most sense to upgrade, basically, the effectiveness of that billboard. The question about, well, the first question I have is that if the billboard companies own the property, they're paying a property tax to Jefferson County. Is that correct?
They typically have a lease with the property owner, so two separate things.
Right. And so there is, it's not a lot, but there is a chunk of money coming in through the county on a property tax basis. The other thing is the benefit that would come back to Wheat Ridge. We all know that I-70 is, the reason that this question's even come up to us is that I-70 is where 18 gazillion cars go by every second. And being able to reach those motorists, most of whom don't live here, is very important to the companies that are looking to make this investment. So I think that it wouldn't be too much to ask as we look at permitting these things for some sort of a public service, a slice of the 8 rotating messages that the state of Colorado says can have to be a certain length of time and no more than, I believe, 8 different messages. And one of those I would like to think could be reserved for Wheat Ridge to use as a public service, kind of like we do on the sign outside the rec center. I think those are very effective, and having those as part of the rotation on the billboards would certainly give a boost to the city of Wheat Ridge that all these motorists are passing through. If you wouldn't mind, if you can go back to the map, if you can get it back up. There, I do have a question on the existing Arvada digital sign, the one next to the Cowboy War Place on the frontage road. And there are a couple of the existing static billboards in Wheat Ridge that are certainly within a mile. Would that come into effect? Would that affect that cluster?
It would if you chose to write the regulation that way. You know, and the city has looked at some outside the city uses as they impact special use permits within the city. So you'd have, when you say would it, yes, if you chose to make that a requirement, would be not, you know, digital billboard, okay, not within X, and not within a mile of any other digital billboard, and then it wouldn't really matter where that other one was. Okay. So that's something you can have.
That would go to the idea of simplifying.
Yeah.
And then, okay, those are the things that I wanted to make sure. But yeah, I support us moving forward as quickly as we can to get this going, because you can go to any other place in the world. I go to Chicago every year for Thanksgiving, and when you're driving in from the west on the Eisenhower Expressway, these digital billboards are like higher than the Sears Tower. They're like so high up in the air that you can't see them. We're not looking at that. We're looking at things much closer to the ground. I don't believe they're that much of a distraction. The issues on I-70 have more to do with the way that highway is designed than any sort of distraction. So yeah, I support moving ahead with these as frankly as quickly as we can. Thanks.
Since everybody's had a bite at the apple on this question, let's go ahead and just ask for consensus. Is there a consensus to move forward with the digital billboards, and then we'll get into the details if there is? Okay, seeing that we do, so let's go into the next questions.
All right. So these are kind of combined, but we've been talking a little bit about minimum spacing, and so that's one consideration that you have. And then one side of the sign, two sides of the sign. I think that would be another consideration. But the quantity, staff is recommending 4 single-sided because this would be new to us. And again, that is something that we would be looking at as proximity to residential. I appreciate that discussion here tonight. And then staff is also recommending the lottery process for selection. So I think the first biggest question is going to be that distance, the spacing.
And if it helps the conversation, I think, I don't know that we need a consensus on each individual standard. What I'm hearing tonight is include some provisions about lighting, include some provisions about impact to residential. As Jana said, we're recommending 4 single-sided conversions. So same height, same size, simple as possible. The one thing that sort of evolved since we published the memo in terms of spacing is that the industry did reach out to us and said, hey, if you can be more flexible, we hear you about clumps. They're all a mile apart, but our ownership pattern is different than you may realize. We don't have a map that says who owns which billboard. And in conversations with them, they think, and you heard one comment allude to it, that they could achieve a solution in their own boardrooms where each current operator gets 1 billboard. I'm not interested in regulating who gets what in the same way that short-term rentals has been challenging of like, you only get 1 and I need to know in perpetuity who owns which billboard. We can, however, write a lottery process that says something about, in the first, if all of the submittals do not preclude any of the other submittals, they can all be processed simultaneously. That could probably only happen if we reduce that spacing requirement to something in the 1,000 to 2,000 foot range. That's not a magic number, so it does feel like the place where we'd appreciate the most feedback from you all. But for efficiency of the conversation, unless you guys want to arbitrate each individual, our current recommendation is 4 single-sided conversions through a lottery process with consideration for lighting and residential. And we'd certainly invite your input on spacing, particularly.
Okay.
Thanks.
We'll go to Councilor Okada first.
Thank you, Mayor. To double check Councilmember Larson's question, the billboards that are clustered around the existing Arvada digital billboard, wouldn't state regulations preclude us from having that island become digital on the Arvada, on the Wheat Ridge side?
Yes, the CDOT regulations, the minimum spacing is 1,000 for digital billboards. So if any signs were closer than that, then that would preclude them.
To me, that would mean that our maximum is 3 then, not 4. Because that island that is to the east, I might be missing something major here, but that island that's to the east there is 2 Wheat Ridge billboards, 1 Arvada billboard, and they all seem to be within 1,000 feet of each other. And if the Arvada billboard is already digital, then that island is gone for us on Wheat Ridge. Yeah, 8 and 9, yeah. Am I seeing that correctly? I think that's what you were saying, yeah.
I think it's still possible to achieve 4 digital billboards in Wheat Ridge with CDOT's 1,000 foot separation and Arvada's locations. We haven't done some scenarios, but our friends in the billboard industry, I think we're satisfied that that would still yield 4 billboards in Wheat Ridge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That it's funny because in my mind it's just becoming one of those math puzzles I used to enjoy a long time ago. But the to me it almost feels like both having a spacing requirement and a cap would be prudent for us to consider. If the cap is 4 and the spacing's in that contingency, then we might be in a space there. But advocating for a cap that is lower is something that I would be interested in entertaining.
Lower meaning lower than 4?
Lower than 4.
Mayor Pro Tem Hulting.
Thank you. Councilor Okada drew attention to something that I'd been also wanting to ask about, which would be the CDOT eligibility of locations 8 and 9, given Arvada's signage. So I think that impacts our understanding of sort of this clustering effect. However, I do want to recognize that Site 15 faces I-76 and not I-70, and feels like it could be treated a little bit distinctly because it wouldn't be competing on the same view plane. So just wanting to name in principle. So Site 15 is like the upper furthest, yeah. So here's what I'm hearing that makes sense to me. The mile creating the clusters feels good to me for a discussion principle, but is harder for implementation for a regulatory standpoint. So I would be supportive of having that to 2,500 feet. I think within that, we could find some solutions like between, site 1 and 3 or 4 and 7 or 10 and 14. Like there's a couple of different combinations that would allow enough distance. Again, my principal concern is really that visual distraction of things changing in your view shed while you are driving. So I would support a 2,500 foot radius. I would like it to include existing Arvada billboards would be my preference. And if I'm understanding you correctly, Lauren, it sounds like the current operators feel like they could come to an agreement around figuring out like an equitable distribution of 4 licenses, like am I understanding that correctly?
As it was communicated to me, if it were, I know for sure if it was 1,000 feet, the CDOT spacing, they could come to an agreement where each entity would be able to put a location into the lottery that allows each of the 4 operators to put a location into the lottery.
Okay. I would support allowing that to be a first pass. And if that was not a solution that the operators were able to hash out themselves but within our regulatory, that we could then move to a true lottery system. And then I would like to include a 10-second minimum rotation is important to me. I agree with Councilor Okada. I would support anything that would bring it down to 3 or 4, but I do, at some point, this is the future of billboards. Billboards are either going to go away or they're going to become digital. So I think that this feels to me like a palatable first pass for us to get feedback from our community to figure out how it's working for them. So I'm comfortable with 4, but if we can't get there, 3 is okay too. And then I think beyond that, that satisfies my biggest concerns with this. So I think that's what I got to say. Thanks.
Councilor Ohm?
Thank you, Mayor. On the number 7, I just want us to be aware that that's where I think the American Hotel is going away, and there'll be something very tall in its place. And I just really want us to be thoughtful of not having this digital billboard on the way from someone's view of the 10th floor looking towards the Rocky Mountains. And also to be conscious of the relationship of the elevation of people's houses to the elevation to the sign, so that obviously as the residentials in general are probably lower. I know like on Wadsworth, that gets really pretty high west of Wadsworth, but east of Wadsworth, it might get a little bit lower. And so that we're really trying to avoid having the signs at that same eyeball level as somebody that's on a higher property versus ideally that relationship would be much more separated. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Martell?
Thank you, Mayor. So Mayor Pro Tem Holteen touched on one of the points I wanted to make, and that is, Lauren, the way you explained that the commercial partners suggested that they could reach the 4 as a group. For me, the importance is being very conscientious of the digital placement in residential versus commercial or commercial versus residential location, that if that sensitivity is given priority, I feel very comfortable allowing them to take a pass at working out where those 4 locations are. That I think they're going to make better decisions than I would. And as long as the lighting is really addressed, I feel comfortable giving them that authority versus requiring spacing. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Quinn?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I won't beat this dead horse too much longer. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen about the spacing and the lottery and all that. I just, and all the kind of a combination of the other cities' regulations that they already have, I think we can come up, we have really good people here, so I'm sure they'll come up with something we can all live with. I just have a real big concern with by Ward Road, number one, that we just had the beer truck crash there that I missed out on. And we had a fatal accident there. I realized that was with the construction that was going on there, but that little area, I think we got a lot of highways coming together and merging and moving on, and the hospital there, like people, if they're in a hurry looking for the hospital, I just think if we can not have 1 and 2 on this list. I don't know if that's possible or not, but I think there is a little concern with that particular area. The rest of it, I think our folks will have good regulations wrote for this, and so I trust you.
Anybody else? Okay. Councilor Okada.
I'm so sorry. I know this is a hot topic and we're going on long, but I do want to talk just a tiny bit about the lottery process. It was mentioned earlier, in my day job, we encountered lottery processes for license awarding very frequently, and I think that might be a worse application of lottery processes for license awarding, because there's a lot more that can go wrong in that world. But I do want to ask staff to elaborate just a little bit on an alternative to a lottery system, just for the exercise of the idea. I totally hear from the slide the benefits of the lottery system. There's an equity that's built into it, and there's a process there. But I want to invite that. I'll save my second part for after the answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably two-part answer. The first is that it's shaded by the fact that we were sued some number of years ago in terms of how we filled vacancies for billboards, and it was the lottery process that saved us in that situation, and that we ended up having.
Did you say 2 years ago? Was it recent?
No, it was like 15 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
It was right before my time, I think. In the old days, you would come into the office with a paper application and race to the clerk's office to get time stamped. We would probably now use a digital form that would all come in within milliseconds of each other. So first in doesn't seem necessarily fair. The lottery process worked really well for us when we had it for the billboard. It's not your complete application situation. Like Jana said, you submit essentially a letter of interest with the location, and we affirm that it's eligible from a very loose standpoint, and then they can proceed. And then to fill the subsequent vacancies, you sort of pick the next one and the next one. If the industry were to come up with a scenario where everybody wins, I would write into the language of our code that if the number of submittals is equal to or less than the number of vacancies and no single location precludes another, then they could all advance together as a little incentive to help them work together and everybody wins. But I think that, it's the reason that we are erring towards the lottery process is because it has worked for us in these sort of limited case scenarios. We have it for marijuana, we had it for billboards. I'd ask Mr. Dahl to opine further. You've helped us write those.
Sure. The additional color I guess I can add to that is when we did have the lottery process in place, these locations are highly sought after, and so a vacancy opened up, and we got applications from a couple of companies. And the truth is, in my opinion, whoever didn't get the spot would have elected to bring suit, and one of them did, to say, well, that process wasn't fair. And I'm convinced that no process could have been fair enough to preclude that. But having said that, as Lauren pointed out, the city's process was upheld by the court, and they said, yeah, your process was appropriate, and the company that got the spot keeps the spot. But so the lottery process doesn't insulate you from suit, but if you do it well, it allows you to win. Having said that, I absolutely agree with Lauren that the companies probably have an incentive, if we design it correctly, to work together so that we're not in that spot at all. And I would be inclined to see how that works. And what I'm hearing is a sort of emerging consensus, is something that Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen articulated, and I can rattle through that in a minute, or she can, but I know you had a follow-up.
Thank you. No, that answers my question and the follow-up as well. Thank you, Warren. I appreciate that. And I think some of my concerns originally with lottery systems are also tied to the possibility of underqualified people getting those situations. But it sounds to me like we have very competent companies that are approaching the situation really well right now. So that helps assuage my concerns about that. I'm ready to submit a lottery process. The other question that I have is it sounds like a pretty generous offer from the commercial partners to put city messages up. And I don't want to discount that in any way. That offer on its own is very helpful for me. Would we be asking for that to be codified? Is that even possible to codify something like that? Is that a part of the consensus that can be put in this direction, or is it truly just goodwill, which is totally okay if it is?
I'd like to research that a little bit, and what it implicates is that a taking, right? Because you're taking public property or private property for public purpose in some way. And there's probably a little case law around that. I wouldn't be surprised because it's so common to see public service announcements. I expect that there's been a regulatory system or a consent-based system that is allowing that without us having to argue about it. But I've made a note here that I want to check on that. If we get to that point and are putting together a draft program for you, that's one of the details in that program, along with many of the others, like the whole message hold time, the degree to which lighting can be adjusted based upon the neighborhood, et cetera.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That helps me quite a bit. I lost wherever I wanted to go, so I'll yield. Thank you.
I'm going to go back to Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen to see if we can do a consensus.
I love how no one can pronounce my name tonight, and I think it's because at the last meeting, I said people don't know how to pronounce it, and everyone's like freaking out. It's Hulteen. Okay, so here is what I am proposing. Consensus for a 2,500-foot minimum distance, and that includes measurement from existing digital signage in adjacent jurisdictions. There will be licensees for 4 single faces. We would like a 10-second minimum message hold time. And that we would like, and I'm not going to get the language right, but that we would like regulation around the light adjustment for residential adjacent neighborhoods. And that if the operators can't negotiate an equitable distribution of the existing licensees within the parameters we've set within 30 days, then the city can switch to a lottery system. And I just want to address and we would like to include some sort of public benefit. And to Mr. Dahl's points, I'm not sure how we exactly address that. So that will be researched and brought back.
Based upon the consensus, if it passes, IAS and the staff will consider that we've been directed to find alternative ways to make that, embed that into the program.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And then to Council Member Quinn's points, I'm hearing you about a couple of those locations. I think we could look at crash data along there and identify a lot of like pretty concerned, like Ward Road just east of there is. So I think exempting specific locations could be a slippery road, but I just want to register like that concern. But I think there's probably some other similar concerns along those jurisdictions or those corridors. So again, 250 feet minimum, 4 faces, 10-second. Message hold time needs to include regulation of the light impact on the residential neighborhoods. Operators have an opportunity for equitable distribution of the licensees, and if they cannot reach that on their own, then the city will open a lottery. And the city attorney is going to, and we would like some sort of public benefit in it. And that's what I'm putting forward for consensus.
Just to confirm,
That was
25.
2,500
Thank
feet.
you.
Yeah.
2,500 and 4 one-sided.
Do we have a consensus?
Can I ask for clarification? Is that for one-sided a cap? Because I hear the 4 in that context.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a consensus? We have, yes, all 8. Yes. We are unanimous. Okay. Does that answer all of your questions on the billboards?
It does.
All right.
Thank you very much.
That's a good one. Let's go into the signs.
So we'll talk signs real quick. We have a few pictures that match the ones you saw in the memo. Gina's going to get us there. And then similarly, this is all falling under the umbrella theme of reasonable flexibility. So we'll, if it makes sense, we'll ask for sort of a batch consensus to advance staff's recommendation, which Jana will summarize.
Okay, so I'll walk through each one of these and give you a couple pictures to look at. Wall signs. So right now our code says that all wall signs have to be facing a public street or a major internal drive. And there are always some questions. Is this a major internal drive or not? There are also places where, for instance, in the Lutheran the Legacy campus, we wrote into there where signs could face like a public open space. So if you're walking on the trail, you can see where the coffee shop is, something like that. This would allow greater flexibility, and also the maximum square footage of the signage around the building would not increase. So if someone said, if a company said, I see the greatest benefit in facing a park for my certain business, then they could allocate more of their signage square footage to that side, for example, as opposed to the street side. So this is something that we're proposing to basically simplify what the placement of the wall signs and add flexibility to those.
The reason that we're showing the Works or golds on this image is because, for example, Works kind of has 2 to 3 frontages, depending on how you look at it. We honestly don't care if they feel strongly about which side of their business they should put their signage. We don't feel like we should be in the position of arbitrating that. So this and the following all come to you from our planners who have to review permits and say no, and we're like, if they want to sign on that side, who are we to say they can't? It doesn't change, as you said, the overall signage. It just gives them flexibility to choose where they want to put it.
Yeah, and I would add that some of these locations have rear entrances, and technically they can't have a sign on that rear entrance other than a small directional sign, so. Okay, the next topic is painted murals. Our code basically says that you can't have a mural. These look great, don't they? But it basically says that you cannot advertise a product or business as part of your mural. So if you have, for example, we had a request from the Works to come in to paint a really nice mural with some bowling pins on it on the side, but unfortunately we had to say, I'm sorry, that depicts a brand or a service. And so this would give us the opportunity to not only comply with state, federal regulation on content neutrality, but it would also allow us not to be put in a position as staff as to say, is that a bowling pin on your bowling alley? And so we would appreciate the flexibility, and I think it would actually, there are a lot of blank faces that would probably benefit given our, desire for artistic murals and that sort of thing in the community. Okay, next topic is roof signs. Technically, we do not allow roof signs, and roof signs actually include mansard roofs, which the Amicis building has a mansard type roof. That is considered a wall sign. Did I just misstate that? I think I did. Mansard roof is considered a wall sign, and that's why they are allowed what looks like it's on their roof. It's actually a wall sign. But then we have other centers, especially smaller centers where, such as the Wheat Ridge Meats and Poultry, where they don't really have any viable place for a sign, and the businesses there do have legal nonconforming roof signs. And so in order to provide that flexibility for businesses who may not otherwise have a viable location for a sign on their building that customers can see and know where to, part of this is being able to get where do you want to go. We think that adding some flexibility on roof signs where there is no other practical alternative for a sign would be beneficial to the local businesses. Okay, and then window signage. Some of you may be aware that spandrel glass, for example, windows, sometimes you cannot access that. It's just a decorative window from the outside. This is an example, this is over in the corners, an example of a spandrel glass window that you really cannot access from the inside. Window signs are allowed up to 25% on windows. But if you can't reach that, you cannot place them under our current code on the exterior of the building, despite the fact that they could be well-maintained, vinyl, durable materials, et cetera. And so having some flexibility on the allowance for window signs on the exterior of the glass, as long as they're well-maintained and durable materials and that sort of thing, would also simplify things for local businesses and for staff. And then one thing that came up a couple of years ago when we amended the billboard regulations, changeable copy signs. That's something that frequently you see gas price signs, time and temperature signs, and that sort of thing. Technically, those are actually a changeable copy sign. So inadvertently, those technically are not allowed in certain places that should be allowed. Am I saying that right? So it would make more sense to basically waive these types of signs that are very common around our community already, so they are not non-conforming. So it'd be time and temperature, fuel price signs, lottery jackpot amounts. What else did I have up here?
Yeah, fixed character is how we classified it.
Sorry?
Fixed characters, so
Yes.
not video screens.
Yes, fixed characters. So where you see a lottery flipper or gas price flipper sign, those technically change, and therefore they are called changeable copy, but it wouldn't make sense not to allow those at all. So that's a summary of those. Did you all, I guess we can entertain any questions, but the basic questions are, does council agree with staff's recommendations on these 5 different areas to allow more flexibility on local business signs?
Questions? Councilor Ohm.
Thank you for the presentation. So a couple questions I had is on the murals. So a bowling alley could, if we change this, it could have bowling pins, right? And a hair cutting place could have combs, brushes, right? And so the same would prove that if you're a gun shop, you could have guns on the side. Would that be correct? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page,
Yeah,
if
what-
that's the
what we-
service.
No question. What we have to navigate here is the Supreme Court's decision in that Reed versus Gilbert case that said if you have to read the sign to know how to regulate it, said the Supreme Court, then you're regulating content. And you can't regulate content unless you reach this incredibly high bar of complete public safety. And so there are some workarounds to that other communities have engaged in. And the communities that have kind of encouraged murals have done so by not, defining them per se and just allowing people to paint their buildings, but being able to say, okay, but to the degree it's a sign, then it's a wall sign, and you've got to deal with your wall sign accounting, the size of wall sign that you get to have. It's worked out pretty well elsewhere by not getting into reading the mural to determine whether or not it's a commercial sign or not. And the reason you're hearing a little vagueness in my answer is that for some communities, just not addressing it at all has solved the problem for them. And I'm actually having a law clerk do a little research to update the Reed case to see if we've got any sort of tea leaves to read, because this is tricky, right? They put up, well, you said I could do a mural, but then it's got a commercial message in it. And what I think staff is saying is we'd like to be able to not get into the business of reading murals. And if council agrees, we'd like to see if we can find a way that the city attorney's office says is defensible. I'm recognizing that's not the kind of clear answer I usually like to give to you. But what I think has been troublesome for staff is to have to read the sign and say, have to read the mural effectively and say yes or no based upon their judgment of what it's saying. You know, that's content, isn't it? You know, you just can't escape that. And so we'd like to find some ways to still allow the community to look better like this. And we've got a number of ideas, but mostly we want to be turned loose by you to explore those. That's the really long answer, and I'm sorry it is that long.
The other question I have is, I'm new here, and my question is, as far as the regulating sign content is generally right now forbidden, correct?
That's right.
But the question is what about marijuana, which is still a federally controlled? Does that apply?
There are some exceptions, and one of those is for illegal activity, right? And so that has been one of the exceptions that cities have been able to do is to regulate actual signage for marijuana businesses based on the fact that the activity has been illegal under federal law. And that has been, so this is like the Swiss cheese, you know, where the cheese is mostly the rule. You can't read the sign. You know, if you have to read the sign to regulate it, it's not allowed, but there are little holes in the Swiss cheese. One of those is illegal activity. Interestingly, another one is off-premise signage. Supreme Court in a later decision, because, you know, you've got to read the sign to know that it's advertising Joe's Pizza downtown, and that's an off-premise sign, and most cities prohibit off-premise signs, right? But you've got to read it to know that it is advertising something. So why is that not violative of the Supreme Court's decision? A few years later, they handed down a decision involving the city of Austin, and they said, we think that that's a locational requirement. And I personally believe that they gave us a little bit of a pass there, but it was the Supreme Court. And so that's another hole in the Swiss cheese. There are a couple of other small ones, and that's how come.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mayor Pro Tem Holting.
Thank you. I have a question about the regulation of the window signs. I understand the application here of that we've got some window signage that looks like windows but isn't interiorly accessible. First of all, the prominent taco shop that was featured in the picture has very good tacos. But I'm also imagining, like, do we regulate how much window can be covered with window signage? Because I imagine a world where window signage explodes, and maybe that's not the aesthetic we're looking for.
No, absolutely. We do regulate the amount of window signage is limited to 25% of the window. Part of that's for safety reasons too. Most cities have a maximum so that not only can you see out, but you can see in.
Okay, great, thank you. And then my other question for the changeable copy. I mean, I personally wouldn't run home and buy my lotto tickets if I didn't realize how rich I'd be when I'm getting off Wadsworth every day. But the two allowable time and temperature, I know historically when I was a little girl, the banks would all put that out. Is that something that is really being actively used, except for at the rec center by us?
We actually do have a couple of time and temperature signs out there. There's one on a.
That aren't part of other.
Yeah, so the reason that we listed those as examples, time, temp, gas prices, you'd have to read them. The way that we'll have to regulate this is to say signs with fixed characters are allowed in places where changeable copy is not allowed. Like changeable copy is not allowed on 38th Avenue in the MUN zone district, but we have gas stations who wanted to put the price up, so we had to write a policy. So it's just meant as an illustrative of what we mean by fixed character. So there's probably others out there, but the way we have to do the code drafting, it's not going to say you're allowed to have gas prices and time and temp. It'll say you're allowed to have fixed character where changeable copies otherwise not allowed, such as blah, blah, blah.
All right. That addresses my underlying concern I had, so thank you. I otherwise support all of this. And to Councilmember Ohm's question about, like, could the gun shop put up a big gun? There was I don't know, 15 years ago on 44th near, I think like Tejon, there was a actually it was a business that worked with the community to do a mural in tribute to a really prominent community member who had died, and he was a really celebrated marksman, like shotguns at things. Obviously, I don't do that. I don't know what it's called, but he was really like accomplished. And so in the mural, he is, 15 feet tall and holding a gun like this. And the community just went crazy. It created this huge conflict between the surrounding community. It's meant to be a tribute to a community member. It was very, very controversial. And they finally, the community finally prevailed, but as a response, what they did is they just conveniently painted a gigantic porta potty over the gun. So anyway, I'm just saying that sometimes community murals can turn into very interesting dialogue space, and I fully embrace us getting into the dialogue of community murals and creativity, and I really support the flexibility around letting businesses figure out where the best placement is. So thanks for bringing this forward, and I'm fully supportive of all measures.
Seeing no other questions, do we have a consensus to go forward with staff's recommendations? It looks like we do. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, nothing else on this topic. We will move to agenda item number 3. Mr. Goff, do we have a presentation on this?
We do.
Oh, yep.
It's Cole. There he is, and Marianne.
Okay, I'm getting requests for a 5-minute break, so let's come back at, let's just call it 8:10. We'll adjourn for 7 minutes. There you go. All right, we are back and we are going to agenda item number 3, which is our citizen survey and the questions. Mr. Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to turn it right over to Marianne, our deputy, to introduce this item.
Great. We are excited here to present our 9th resident survey to you all. Before we get started, I just want to share that this is our last week with Cole Hayslip. He's leaving us for a promotion opportunity back home in California. We're very excited for him. And what better item to end on than the resident survey?
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it over to Cole to get us started.
Absolutely. Happy Groundhog Day. It's also 2-2 Day, if you didn't notice as well.
4 weeks of winter, too.
That's right. Absolutely. All right. So for today's presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about putting the resident survey in context, because as you all know, we do a lot of community engagement here at the City of Wheat Ridge, and I think it's important not to talk about this as a singular event, but to talk about this as one of the many different things that we do here. We're going to talk a little bit about what the resident survey is, some of the methodology behind it, and then we're going to get into the timeline for pushing that survey out and it coming back to you for the presentation of results. And then we're going to pause and ask council a couple questions about survey size and to review some of the policy questions included within the survey before we move on to next steps. So to begin with, putting that resident survey in context, like I said earlier, this is just one of a lot of different community engagement opportunities here for folks in the City of Wheat Ridge. Some of those were our city plan engagement in 2025. We had online activities with 141 respondents. We had a public open house with 85 attendees, and we had steering committees with 25 different attendees just for that engagement project. Also in 2025, we had a Neighborhood Champions project that was launched. We recruited over 100 champions and pushed out over 90 different yard signs to push out information to the public and receive it back from them as well. We had 10 coffees with the mayor in 2025. We had 22 council meetings where everyone can give their 3 minutes, and we had another 21 study sessions where people could provide public input. We had 7 Cops in the Community events, and we had 81 different boards and commissions meetings, all just in 2025. So that is to say, the resident survey is really important, but it is just one of many different opportunities for community engagement here that we did in 2025, and will continue to do community engagement moving forward. So what is the resident survey? Well, it really is 2 different parts. That first part is what we call our consumer report card. That's where we ask people questions like, how do you feel about public works? How do you feel about the rec center? Are staff friendly and kind to deal with? And then people answer those on a Likert scale from, yes, I'm very happy, to neutral, to no, I'm not very happy. And that's the bulk of the survey. Those questions really don't change too much year to year, and it's important that they don't, so that we have long-term data to compare ourselves to, also so that we can compare our data to that of other communities who take similar surveys. The second part of the survey is the policy questions. Those are the questions we're going to ask you for your feedback on later in the presentation. Those change with every iteration of this biannual survey. But overall, the survey is to assess resident satisfaction with government services and employees, help to identify resident priorities related to services, to help guide budget and policy decisions, and to prompt additional targeted engagement. I did want to provide one example on all of that just to put it in context for you of how we kind of use this data. In 2023, for one of our policy questions, we learned that 8 in 10 residents supported street improvements on corridors like 44th, 38th, Youngfield, and sidewalk improvements throughout the city. We subsequently asked a ballot question for a sales tax increase that was related to that, and now we're budgeting some of those projects for implementation. So that's kind of the full cycle of how we use the resident survey and its results to make sure that the dollars that we're spending and the decisions that we're making are aligning with the interests of community members. It's also really important to note that this is a scientifically accurate survey, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons and some of the things that make it scientifically accurate right now. So one of those is random sampling. This is one of the cornerstones of a scientifically accurate survey. And we use random sampling as opposed to opt-in sampling. Opt-in was where, we would put a link on our website and anyone in the city, or maybe even anyone in the world, could go on our website, find the survey, and fill it out. One of the reasons we don't do that, like I just alluded to, is for security purposes, because it's randomized and we're sending it to households. We know who's answering it. We know they live here in Wheat Ridge. And another one of the reasons is when we're having our random sample data, we can't put opt-in data alongside it, because if we were to do that, it would hurt the legitimacy of the random sample results. We could collect it and we could put it alongside it, but still it would put us in a difficult position because we'd have a scientifically accurate survey that might say, 9 out of 10 people are really happy with X. But then if we had opt-in survey results that said 3 out of 10 people weren't happy with X, it would just be a really difficult place for us to live in. Next, the survey uses neutral questions. That's important. We can't ask targeted or leading questions to people if we want to make sure that we're getting good results from them. The questions have to be consistent. Like I alluded to earlier, they stay the same approximately year to year. And one of the things that makes this a scientifically accurate survey, which means it's representative of the community, is that we use representative data weighting. And one of the examples I'd like to talk about so that we all understand what that means is multi-unit weighting. So we send this survey out to different types of households. We know some of them are single unit households. We know some of them are multi-unit households. We generally get a lower response rate from multi-unit households than we do single unit. But because this is a scientifically accurate survey, the administrators can take the data from multi-unit, they can extrapolate it and amplify it so that it's representative of the entire community. And they do that with all different types of demographic groups to make sure that the responses are accurate. Again, it's scientifically accurate, so we're using comparative questions so that we can say people are happier with X services in Wheat Ridge than they are in X, Y, and Z communities elsewhere in the Front Range and elsewhere in the United States. And one of the things that's really important is that we are maintaining transparency in the survey. When you get the report, it will tell you exactly what the methodology was for calculating the end results. It'll show you every single survey that they got back from the public. So if you really wanted to, you could run your own numbers and test them against the results and things like that. But that transparency is something that's really important in scientifically accurate surveys. Another thing that's really important about this survey is that for it to be scientifically accurate, we have to get an adequate sample size that ensures that we have a 3 to 5% margin of error. We're able to achieve that pretty easily here in the city of Wheat Ridge, and we're able to achieve that by sending out surveys to just 4,500 different households here in the city of Wheat Ridge. We'll talk a little bit later about if you want to increase the number from 4,500 to 5,000. Just know that it's already scientifically accurate as it is. If we did increase it, it wouldn't have a significant impact on the accuracy of the results. All right, moving on to the timeline of the survey. So this is what it's going to look like. In March, we are going to send out a pre-survey postcard. It is going to say, look at your mailbox. You're going to get a survey here soon. Be ready for it. Then we're going to send out the surveys. It'll be a paper survey, and people can fill that survey out. They can put it in an envelope that they get along with it, and they can send it right back in. Or they'll get a unique online access code that they can use to answer that survey. What's important to note is that if they use the online access code, they can answer the survey in Spanish. We also provided that in 2023, which is the last time we did the survey. That was the first time we did it. We didn't get any Spanish responses, but we're hoping that we can get some this year. In April, we'll send a reminder postcard out to people to say, hey, don't forget to take that survey. It's going to close soon. Here's the different ways you can do it. One thing that I wanted to note for you is that's a little bit different. So in the past, we had sent out 2 copies of surveys, but we were hearing from people that it was just unnecessary and it was kind of a waste of paper and other resources. So this year, we're going to be sending out a reminder postcard instead. That's allowed us to save a little bit of money on the survey costs, and that's why you're able to do things like, if you so choose, increase the number of households that we survey from 4,500 to 5,000 with no additional cost for this iteration, although there would be future costs assumed. And then after we send out the reminder postcard, the survey would then close shortly thereafter. And then in July/August, those survey results would be delivered to council. We'd have the survey company come here, they would give you a presentation, and they'd be able to answer any questions that you would have about the results, its findings, and what you might be able to take away from them. So, as I alluded to earlier, one of the questions that we have from council is, would you like to increase the sample size from 4,500 to 5,000? As I stated earlier, if you do increase it, it wouldn't have an impact on the margin of error. We're able to do that in this survey iteration with no increased cost. But this is the end of the contract that we're in currently. We're going to go out to bid for the next iteration. And if we increase it to 5,000 now, it's assumed that moving forward, the baseline will be 5,000. And the assumption is that there are some more increased costs with that over time with new bids. So that is something to consider. What's also to consider is there's new developments happening in the city of Wheat Ridge. We're projected to get a lot of units from the Lutheran Legacy campus. So you may want to increase it in the future. So you might just want to increase it now. So that's something to consider. That's a question that we have from council and we would like some feedback on. I'm going to keep going and just read through the policy questions for you so you can consider them. And then we can come back and we can get your feedback on this and each of the policy questions. So the first policy question that we had, if future capital needs cannot be funded through existing revenues, which may result in impacts to existing service delivery, how likely would you be to support a voter-approved funding measure to address those needs? And this would be a Likert scale question, so it would be very likely, somewhat likely, neutral, not very likely, extremely not likely, something like that. The second policy question, which types of capital projects should be the highest priorities for long-term funding? And then they would select up to 3 of the following: streets and roadways, sidewalks, bike lanes, ADA accessibility improvements, parks and open space, rec facilities like Anderson Pool or the Rec Center, city facilities like City Hall, a public safety facility, a public works facility, other, and people could submit anything that they would like. None of the above, or don't know, not sure. So those are your policy questions. Our next steps after getting feedback from the council tonight on those policy questions and on whether or not you'd like to increase the survey size would be to finalize the draft survey with our consultant and then start getting ready to push that out to people. Happy to answer any questions that you may have, but for now, I'll turn the meeting back over to the mayor.
All right, thank you, Cole. Do we have any questions, Ms. Wood, or Councilor Wood, sorry?
Yeah, I had a question about the sample size. So first of all, though, I might say, I think the policy questions are good. No comments there. I think they're good. On the sample size, I understand that increasing it doesn't improve the margin of error or doesn't, we don't have to have it to maintain that margin of error that we seek to have. But wouldn't the additional information be good to have? Wouldn't it figure into the information we would gain?
So because the survey results are already scientifically accurate, we can already assess that the data that we get is representative of the entire community with 4,500. Although we can certainly increase the size. Some of the benefits are that more households get the survey, so they feel more included. But it's really a policy question for the council to decide there.
We have over the years gotten questions from residents or concerns. It's like, well, why didn't you send it to more? I didn't get one. And, they don't necessarily understand the statistical significance of it. I think that's maybe one benefit. You could say, well, we're increasing it to 5,000 instead of 4,500. It's not going to change much of anything, but there's no cost. If you want to be able to say, we're increasing the sample size. I think that's one benefit.
Councilor Martell.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Cole, and congratulations. On the two policy questions, I'm okay with both of them. I would like to request you consider flipping them. And the reason is when I think of the first one, it's assuming that the survey recipient knows what those capital projects are. And then the next question lists several. And even knowing what they are, as I look through these, I could see going to 23 and going, oh, wait, I want to go back to the first one and think about that again. So I would recommend on having 23 first, so people are thinking about actual capital improvements when they do the next question. And on the 23 with the list of capital projects, because the Anderson Pool project is such a big project, was there consideration in having it be a line item of its own versus looped in with other Parks and Rec topics? Because that is just going to be such a funding question.
Yeah, it's certainly something we could do. We could separate that out if that's a desire of the council. Absolutely. I don't think that there was a lot of intentionality around lumping it in here. So we're happy to take that feedback and implement it.
Okay. No. Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen.
Oh, thanks for pronouncing my name correctly. I really like Councilor Martell's suggestion about inverting those two questions. So I've got a couple of things. So first of all, looking at question 22, I actually find the language a little bit confusing. In particular, how likely or unlikely would you be to support a voter-approved funding measure to address these needs? That makes it sound like, are you supporting something that the voters already approved? And what we're trying to assess there is if it was on the ballot, would you support it? So that language needs to get cleaned up because I find that question is not clear. And then on question 23, I know that we're looking for sort of like a neutrality approach to it. However, I'm political, I'm not neutral. I hope I'm neutral good or whatever that grid is. But, so I think, we went to our community recently and asked them to fund sidewalks and bike lanes. And so I would suggest rearranging the order of these and putting our biggest concerns, at least at the forefront, because I'm just saying, if I were a voter and I was like, dude, I just voted for 2J and now you're asking me again about sidewalks and bike lanes, didn't I just fund that? I would be a little bit cynical about the rest of the question. So I would suggest we order it. It seems to be in a little bit of a random order right now anyway, but I would suggest we take a look at the ordering.
Or even remove maybe
No,
sidewalks and
don't
streets?
remove it.
You don't think you want them removed?
It could be something people still want. I would suggest consolidating I would suggest consolidating sidewalks and ADA accessibility as to one. I think there's a consolidation in there. But I do think and this kind of ties into my response about should we do 5,000? This to me is a prelude to polling. I mean, by asking this question, we are priming the pump of our community that this is something, any of our policy investigations that we do through outreach and communication is part of the early stages of the process. So I really like maybe being more specific around Anderson Pools specifically, because we're not asking in a year-over-year monitoring how much do people like Anderson Pool over 20 years. We really need to know in the next 2 years how much people like it. So I like naming that and maybe perhaps switching the order a little bit. So the things that people did, I mean, you know me, I'd like bikes be number one choice, but I'm serving my community, not me. So that's another consideration that I think would be helpful there. And then as to going to 5,000, like, I don't think it's necessary if for the, getting the results we need from the survey to inform us. However, to my point, it is also a prelude to polling by asking some of the questions. So to that end, and I did take a look at our population change, both what's already in place, like not just Future Lutheran, but we've built a lot, even, in the time that I've been on council. So I think that adjustment is commensurate with population growth we've already had and are anticipating. So I do support that. And then one last thing, back into the confusing language on question 21, which is how much do you agree or disagree that the city of Wheat Ridge should do each of the following? And it uses the word promote, and I'm not sure what it's like. It dawned on me, I wouldn't know how to answer this. Like, how much do I agree that the city should promote efforts to revitalize Wheat Ridge's housing areas? I don't know if that's like promoting mean we're going to take out one of these digital billboards and let the community know we're doing it, or is promoting the effort actually like prioritizing efforts to do the work? So I think just cleaning that language up, the use of the word promote to me sounds like it's a communications and outreach question.
And this was a repeat question, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it probably, if we change the language significantly, they'll tell us it's not, they're not going to be able to
I'm
compare
not
it to
looking
year
for
before, which
significant.
is
I think
fine.
there's just a language.
They're
to
pretty
okay.
picky, even if you change one. We can ask.
I'm not
a
gonna,
couple.
it's not a
Yeah.
hill to die on.
Right.
I'm just saying, when I went through it, I was like, I don't know how to answer this.
Yeah.
And I'm an above average educated citizen about the community, so.
And it's a question, the whole question could come out potentially as well. I think this was very specific to a certain period of time in Wheat Ridge. But we'll ask about changing, promote. I understand your concerns there. But I'm just rereading it again. If we, is this information is going to be helpful for us at where we are today? We're doing all these things anyway, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the planning is that we've
Maybe
just
we
done
should
the
just get rid
last.
of the question.
I mean, if staff doesn't know what to do with it, I feel
Yeah.
like we just did a bunch of planning that is actually
That's telling us
answering
to do
this
all this
question.
already.
Yeah, so I would be okay if it was deleted as well.
I think this was a new question we added in the last survey to specifically promote
Yeah.
businesses and economic development. So,
Yeah, that was 3 years ago now, right?
Mhm.
All right. Well,
So it might be worth noting if what we've done is working.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll think about
Okay,
that.
all right, that's my feedback, thank you.
Good
Okay. Counselor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick question on 23. Did you consider just having, instead of choose 3, just having however many questions are, 7, 8, please rank, on a scale of 1 to 7, which one is the highest priority, which one's the lowest for each one?
Yeah, we did consider a couple different question formats, and what we did is we took those to the consultant and we said, you guys figure out which one makes sense because you're the experts and you know this more than us, and they like the choose 3 one the best.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Okada.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Really quickly about question 21, I think it might just be a problem of verb stacking. Maybe we could still get what we want out of it by not asking if Wheat Ridge should promote efforts to revitalize but instead should we ask, should Wheat Ridge revitalize and truncate that way? That might clear up the confusion of it, because I remember having the same difficulty where I was trying to check for negatives and go through all of that stuff, which I think might just be unnecessary there. I only have a question about the 4,500 to 5,000 surveys. There's a hint in the document that says that this might increase costs in the future. I imagine that would only be proportional to the 500 extra surveys. I mean, who knows in the future, but that's probably what we can expect as council, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yep. I'm very supportive of this. Thank you.
Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. In my reading of the methodology here, this is what I refer to as statistically valid, and their methods, the way they present the data in the report, I think was very solid. The issue I have is the way a lot of the questions are going to ask. I'd like to go through these. I understand it is probably too late to get the extent of the changes that I would recommend. But I also understand that the questions in the first 20 or so questions are the same questions asked every time. So I'm wondering if maybe when we bring in for the next iteration of this survey, that we might be able to revise some of the questions. Basically, and I do have I'm certainly not an expert, but I do have a background in marketing data, and so much of what we were involved with was asking the questions in the correct way. For my first example, the first example that I have, in my experience, every time you do a public opinion survey like this, the first question is usually, do you think the organization or the city or whoever is going in the right direction or the wrong direction? It's always the opener, and we don't have that here. We do have something a little later that kind of refers to that, and then when we get to question number 5, where we've got a series of how do you feel about the way this city treats residents and provides a safe and secure environment, that kind of thing. And the answers that we're looking for are either excellent, good, fair, or poor, and that is that really should be replaced with satisfied, neutral, very satisfied, or whatever the spectrum there would be. The questions are also oftentimes what they call double barrel, which means they're asked two things at once, and that can kind of discourage clear thinking on how they want to answer it. That's from question 4 and question 5 are probably too long. Yeah, I know we're asking people to invest a lot of time in responding to this survey, but some of the questions are repetitive. Some of the questions have been asked before or asked in a different way. When we ask about, for example, about transportation, and we're asked about the condition of streets and sidewalks and access to mass transit. And then the last question in that section, that's number 8, traffic flow on major streets, when we are just coming out of a 4.5-year reconstruction project on Wadsworth. That would tend to skew the answers. Continue here. I did read the entire survey, and I did mark up a lot of the things that I had serious questions about the way the questions were asked. Again, for example, when we, well, I'm going to skip to the next one here. This is on, second here. And that is question.
Councilor Larson, can you clarify, are you calling into question the methodology of the survey, or are you providing specific feedback on specific questions?
I'm sorry?
Are you calling into question the methodology of the survey?
No,
Or
I
are
am
you
not. The
providing-
way the survey is put together is correct. It's the way the questions are stated, frankly. The idea that asking two negatives in a question of a problem that need to be solved, that sort of thing, they're just, they lead often to an answer that I think, I don't know whether it doesn't invalidate the survey, but it does lead to an answer that may not be completely accurate.
So just point of order, before we go much further, can you give us a sense to what extent, like getting into like this level of feedback across all the questions, I mean, to what extent is that something that the survey operator would, what's involved if that much feedback comes back to them?
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna, again, as we mentioned, these have been consistent questions over the years. We've added different categories here and there once in a while, but they do question every word change we make pretty significantly. Again, it's up to you guys if you're okay not being able to have the trends of the data over the years. We can make any word changes we want, but that's the risk.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I understand that, and I understand that it is probably too late in the process here too, because we're talking about a survey that's going to go out here shortly. Too late to make significant changes into what we have here. It's just, I just want to be on the record noting that, again, several of these questions the questions are just stated incorrectly. So when we roll around again in a couple of years to do the survey again with the new firm, I'd like to, whether we set up a small group of council and staff to address some of these issues, and at least with the understanding that we can make it better. We can make a better survey, one that is, it's frankly clear, doesn't lead to specific sorts of outcomes that we're looking for. And then rather than waste everybody's time with a lot of the other concerns I have, I do have a question about number 22, I believe, was the, number 23 under the policy. In there, there is no mention of the infrastructure. We talk about streets and highways sort of as one, but there's the concern that we have, and we're going to be talking about in the future, about how we fund all the repairs and replacements of the storm drains system, which the city is responsible for. In the future, I'd like that question to be added, and I'm not exactly sure how it'll be worded, but it just be one of the things that if we're going to invest in capital projects, that we make sure that there is a specific amount set aside, whether it's through a utility or some other means, but some way to pay for these fairly expensive repairs that simply have to be done. And again, a whole series of questions. I've read this thing, the survey a couple of times, and rather than go through those one by one, and it is getting late, so I will defer this until we have an opportunity to talk about how we structure the next go around in this, because this survey is far too important to not be as good as it can be. Thanks.
Thank you. Did you want to?
No, I was going to say, I agree with Mr. Larson's comment. As Mary Ann or Cole mentioned, this is the last iteration of this contract we have, and we've been doing this survey for numerous years, and there are different means and methods out there, and I think the next go-around, it will be the appropriate time to look at that. I totally agree.
Councilor Martell.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have one question on when the survey goes out, it goes to a household. And does that mean, like in my household, could I complete it and Nat complete it?
No, only one person from a household can complete the survey.
Okay.
I think there's actually something on the survey that asks the person in the household who had the most recent birthday.
Oh, okay, cool. Also, I do support the idea of going to 5,000 recipients. I think that, I realize it doesn't impact the margin of error, but I think any opportunity we can get more feedback is worth it. So I support 5,000. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Counselor Snell.
Just overall, I am in support of this. I also just wanted to call attention to the fact that we did postpone this a little bit. I think we walk a fine line sometimes of asking for feedback, and that survey fatigue is real for people. But at the same time, it's a huge opportunity, and we're very lucky to be able to provide so much feedback. So I just wanted to say thank you for doing that and considering that, because I think we'll get better responses. I'd also be in favor of increasing the number to 5,000, just so that, you know, we are going to continue to grow. So I would be in favor of that. But thank you, this is great.
Counselor Quinn.
I was just going to say, what's the proper way to do the consensus thing to go to 5,000?
We'll go to
All
Mayor
in
Pro Tem
favor?
Hulteen and, well, why don't we start with that one first, because I think that's kind of an easy one. So do we have a consensus to go from 4,500 to 5,000? Oh, did you have another question? No, okay. Do we have a consensus to move to 5,000? Okay, we do. That's good. I was going to go to the policy questions. I believe we kind of had a consensus to flip the two questions.
Yeah, I've got the list here.
Do you? Okay, we'll go to Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, so consensus to reverse the order of questions 22 and 23. And then within current question 23, request to break out Anderson Pool, as well as consolidate a couple of the options, reorder them around priorities that we've identified, and to add a stormwater utility or stormwater infrastructure. We also discussed reviewing question 21 with our consultant to see if that could be cleared up or if staff is okay with removing that.
Okay. Do we have a consensus to go with what the Mayor Pro Tem just said? We do. Excellent. Okay. Anything else on this item?
I believe that's it.
Okay.
Thank
Look at
you,
us.
Cole. Appreciate everything you've done for the city. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Thank
congratulations.
you, Cole. We're
We'll
going to
miss
miss you.
You've dealt with lizards and snakes and roosters, and surveys and shooting
Kangaroos?
ranges and kangaroos. What else?
Everything under the sun.
Everything under the sun. Oh. Oh, that's sweet. Oh,
She just turned 80. 81 on Valentine's.
nice.
Excellent.
Yeah. thanks,
Congratulations, Cole.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you for all your hard work. We will go to item number 4, which is staff reports, and we have in 4A.
We do. We're not really looking for a discussion. We have no presentation on this. We just wanted to give you a heads up that this will be coming forward for first and second reading. We'll give more details at public hearing. The reason we're putting it on tonight is to give DOLA a heads up that we are moving forward with this. They want to make sure that we're complying with some state laws in order to get funding for housing type projects. We have a couple applications, or at least one big application in for the Ridge Road project for the Foothills Regional Housing. They're actually reviewing it now, I believe, right? So we don't want to get dinged for not meeting these requirements on the ADUs. And what was the second one? There you go. So if there's no major heartburn tonight, we don't need to have discussion. If you have any major questions, we're happy to answer them. Lauren's still here, but otherwise you'll see this on first reading, second reading. Okay.
Any questions on that? Fantastic.
Mr. Dahl's got something real quick.
In my continuing effort to keep complying with state law, running as hard as I can to keep up with the legislature and the Supreme Court. There's two ordinances. One doesn't have to keep up with state law, but there was a bill passed in the legislature in 2025 on registration requirements for vehicles. And the net result of that legislation is that we need to tinker with our model traffic code to ensure that the police department can still ticket as a municipal offense failure to have a registered vehicle, expired plates, et cetera, something they've been doing. But the House Bill 251112 authorizes us to enforce it, but we need to act affirmatively to plug a little amendment into our model traffic code. It's just a couple pages long, and I'm going to bring that forward to you. So that's one item. Secondly, there's a statute that allows the city clerk to not count votes for write-in candidates unless the proposed write-in candidate has filed an affidavit of intent to be a write-in candidate at least 64 days before the election. Statute says you can do that, but you have to have provided locally in your code or by ordinance that that's your rule. And we don't have that in the city's code right now. It just, we don't have that. Many cities do. And what it does is it forces potential write-in candidates to really take ownership of that at a time where it still can affect the election materials that are distributed. Don't have to create ballots. They have a little blank for write-in, et cetera, because if you know that there are no affidavits that have been filed by that deadline, then any weird kind of write-ins that you get don't have to be counted by the city clerk, and you don't have to even go there. Many cities do this. You don't have to. The policy issues around it would be obviously that it to some degree disenfranchises citizen participation. If you wake up 20 days before the election and say, I think I want to run, you won't be able to, because you needed to have made that choice and made it official by virtue of filing an affidavit with the city clerk 64 days ahead. But at the same time, it reduces kind of the confusion and well, are they really a candidate or not? And I hear a lot of stuff. Can I vote for them? And it leaves the city clerk in the position of having to record those votes. So I'm happy to answer questions about that. I have a draft ordinance that just adds a very short paragraph to chapter, I think 7 it is, our elections chapter in the code, to require this as a precondition to being able to run as a write-in. Doesn't preclude you from being a write-in, just means you've got to kind of get your act together 2 months and 4 days ahead of time. Questions?
Councilor Larson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And first off, if somebody, just the way it's set up now, somebody has they write in a name on their ballot, and our ballots go to Jefferson County for tallying. When they write Mickey Mouse in the write-in candidate, does somebody have to stop then and look up to see if Mickey Mouse is an actual person, or?
Well, they have to count that vote, so it'll be counted. The effect of the statute is you don't have to count write-in votes if they didn't file the affidavit. So in your example, the person didn't, Mickey Mouse didn't, or whoever didn't. But that vote still has to be counted because there is not a local rule saying don't count it unless there's an affidavit. So those votes will be counted and reported.
So that when the Jefferson County Clerk's Office sends us back the results, there will be one vote for Mickey Mouse at the bottom of the
There will.
tally sheet.
That's right.
Okay. I certainly would support requiring people to say if they're going to vote for, if they're going to enter the race as Mickey Mouse, then they should do it ahead of time.
Is that a consensus? I'm kidding. If there are no objections, obviously this will go through 2 readings, and I'm happy to go through this explanation publicly. I think probably the public will want to know, well, what do you, because there is a sense that, gosh, it's an obstacle. It's not much of an obstacle at all. And if you're a serious candidate, if you're running, all of you ran as serious candidates, you know that you've got a whole lot more that you invest time way ahead of time. And so this is a really minimalist requirement, honestly, but it's one that you're allowed to impose by statute.
This was something recently retired city clerk, did recommend on her way out, and she had a lot of experience across the state in election laws, so I think we can trust that.
Yep. Very good. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Goff, any other staff?
Anything else? Lauren, you got anything else? Good.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we'll go to elected officials reports. Do we have any tonight? Mayor Pro Tem Hulting.
Thank you. I've got a couple of things. So I wanted to update our colleagues with Cole's departure. It's impacting the legislative committee's function a little bit in that we're losing our capable staff liaison. We're really fortunate that Amanda Harrison will be stepping in to be our staff liaison on that committee. The biggest constraints that I think are just good to know for council colleagues, we have a really strict cap of 3 bills to take legislative advocacy action on. So the committee is going to be very carefully taking a look at sort of like the peak bill season, which is kind of at the end of this month. And we're going to be really carefully contemplating what those 3 bills are, given that we've got much more constrained staffing capacity. So this legislative session is not shaping up quite like we presented to you previously, but the committee itself is stepping up and taking on a lot of the hard work that Cole did. We'll be sub-Cole probably in our performance, but so we're just shifting a little bit on that, and we'll still be looking at a suite of probably about 20 bills that we'll be taking positions on. And I just want to remind everybody here, the legislative committee contemplates legislative action on behalf of the city. You are all welcome to provide testimony as a unique elected official. Just make sure you're identifying yourself as city councilor for District X with the city of Wheat Ridge, and not on behalf of the city if you decide you want to do any type of advocacy engagement on bills. The second thing I want to mention is I was appointed to National League of Cities Transportation and Infrastructure Services Committee. And we had our first meeting today, and not that y'all want to hear about all my committee meetings all the time, they're fabulous. But this year, our federal government is tasked with revising putting forward a new transportation reauthorization bill. If they get it done this year, we can take our biggest odds on that, but has a tremendous impact on our ability to implement our priorities here locally, the way that funding is allocated. And so NLC is just a great partner and champion to make sure that that process reflects maximizing our own local control and authority over transportation dollars. They presented some pretty exciting options, and NLC is looking to introduce its own sort of transportation bill early on to help simplify the process, and hopefully to have, it's a very, very complicated legislative process at the Capitol, and we know right now this Congress is not really highly productive. So anyway, NLC is a great champion for our interests. They're really trying to see if they can shift some more control of federal dollars to local and MPO level control. So I'll keep you updated on that as I continue to stay engaged in that conversation. And then lastly, I mentioned last week that in response to community concern, which we heard from community members last week, around the potential of increased federal enforcement activities around immigration in our community, Councilmember Snell and I are hosting on February 11th a community safety information fair at the Wheat Ridge Rec Center from 5 to 7. Wheat Ridge Police Department is going to be there and help present helpful information about what we can and are doing, and we think it's a really important opportunity for us to better understand our community needs, for our community to better understand what local government can and can't do, what's being regulated by the state. But more importantly, we are really fortunate that several of our community organizations have agreed to be there also. Because at this point in time and at any point in time, community resiliency is dependent on like the infrastructure of community members, community organizations in the city. So please join us. We have a lot of really great information. I bought whistles, so everyone can have a whistle. And we'll have some digital assets available, Jesse said tomorrow, but as soon as those are available, we'll get to you to share with your network. So if you have any questions about that, reach out to either Councilmember Snell or myself. But we hope to see you there, and please reach out to your community members who have voiced concerns to you. That's what I got. Thanks.
Councilor Okada.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilmember Larson, for reminding me that this is an important thing for us to bring up. Councilmember Larson and I will be having a District 4 meeting at the Maker Space. That's going to be on Tuesday, the 17th. It's going to start at 6 p.m. So we invite anybody in District 4 and beyond to come and have some snacks and talk with us about the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Larson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And being as the February 17th Tuesday is also Mardi Gras, so there may be a theme for the meeting. First off, I would request city staff to please look into the temperature in here. It is really cold, and it's not just me.
Really? Is it cold?
It's cold.
That's it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm with you. I'm all right, yeah.
Duly noted. Last week was a very interesting week. I did get to attend the Colorado Business Roundtable's annual legislative preview session, and Governor Polis was there continuing his victory lap. But he took part in sort of a roundtable discussion of some of the issues affecting the business community here in Colorado. And sometimes we forget that Governor Polis does what he can to support business development and expansion in Colorado. So I do give him a lot of credit for that. And then on Thursday night, I got to attend the Denver Press Club's annual legislative preview session with lots of people with name tags on from the state capitol. I thought that was very interesting. And then, yes, the District 4, remind everybody, the 17th, that's a couple of Tuesdays down the road, but all are welcome, and maybe even wear a Mardi Gras hat.
Do we get beads if we come? We get beads?
Well, we might even throw some beads out to the crowd.
Oh, cool. Councilor Quinn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Super fast. Councilor Woods and I had our first District 3 meet and greet update meeting. Thank you, Councilor Okada, for showing up, as well as you, Mayor. And we also had our police information officer show up, Alex. And I didn't call him Axel this time. He showed, and we had some really good discussion on the speed cameras, the red light cameras, a few of the business openings coming up, and just some really good discussions. We probably missed the mark on advertising it a little bit. We'll work on that as we go in the future. But I brought lots and lots of coffee that the police department took back, and those guys were all high octane over the weekend. And Susan gave them all donuts, so we're in good shape. But thanks for everyone who did show up. It was really good conversation, and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you. Councilor Snell.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things. I wanted to recognize our homeless navigation program. I got to take part last Monday, really small part in the point in time count, but it's just a really small insight into the work that is done every day by that team, and also the work that's done by a lot of the volunteers that take part in that. And so I just wanted to say a thank you to them, and just recognize our homeless navigation department and those two folks. They're doing a fantastic job. And then also wanted to mention Councilor Martell and I are hosting our office hours tomorrow at Mountain Milk Coffee, which is inside Wolf and Wildflower on 38th Avenue, 9 to 11. These take place the first and third Tuesdays of every month. And we are going to continue there at Wolf and Wildflower through this quarter. So please come join us tomorrow. Bring any issues that you have, and we'd love to chat with you. And then I would just also like to recognize I've heard from several other residents with concerns about just community safety and the safety of their neighbors and what's happening. And so another encouragement to come join us on the 11th at the Rec Center for our community safety information fair. We will also be providing Spanish translation for that too. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Martell?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple quick things. I'm sorry to have missed council last week. I have been out with the flu, so I'd like to remind everybody that nasty stuff is going around, so please wash your hands and stay healthy. So I lost a week, but before that, I got to go to the chili cook-off at the Grange a couple weeks ago. I don't know if anyone mentioned it last week, but it was really good, and they raised over $1,000 in one night of donations for their, I can't remember the name of the program, but their program where they send lunch, food home for the weekends with kids.
Backpack.
Yeah, the backpack. And so it was a really good success, and the chilies were also really great. So, and it was a great night to support the Grange. I also wanted to share that the city and the Jefferson Center are doing a winter mental health and wellness series. They've done a couple summer series with like yoga and meditation and walks in the different parks, but they're doing a winter series with a book club, and it meets every other Friday at the Active Adult Center. And we're reading The Lightmaker's Manifesto, which is a book on doing work for change without losing your joy. And with everything going on in the world and in the community, I'm really excited to work through this book with some community members. So if you're interested in joining a book club, the first meeting where we're actually reviewing the book is on Friday afternoon. And then there's a couple more after that, and they're every other Friday. So check it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Citizen Hoppy at some point last week had sent me an advertisement for Wheat Ridge High School's Key Club. They're doing a bingo every Tuesday in February, 4:30 in the cafeteria. It's a $10 buy-in. All the money goes to the Key Club. So definitely make sure if you want to participate in that. That's a lot of fun. And then I was able to join Councilor Quinn, Councilor Wood, and Councilor Okada the other day for the District 3 meeting. Really enjoyed it. Wasn't a huge group, but it was a passionate group and very good discussion. I thought I think it was slated for an hour, and we almost went 2 hours. So really enjoyed that conversation. Whether we agree or disagree on it, I think we all learned quite a bit on some of that. So really enjoyed that, and I think that's really important as we continue to move forward in this day and time, to remember that social media is not the world that we live in. We actually live in the real world, and your neighbors always need help, and it's always great to reach out to them. So take care of your neighbors, take care of the kids that are out and playing and all that stuff, and enjoying the nice weather that I think we're going to have mostly this week. So take care of that, and as always, if you can find it, buy it at Wheat Ridge. We will be back next Monday, the 9th, for our next city council meeting, and then we'll have the next Monday off for President's Day. So get to work. All right, thank you. We are adjourned.